got a tiny piece of ground and I call it my own. Call it my own. Call it my own. I got a tiny piece of ground and I call it my own. It's a home for a big old redwood tree. You know the loggers may not like it, but I call it my own. Call it my own. Call it my own. You know the loggers may not like it, but I call it my own. And it's a home for a great big redwood tree.
Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us again for another edition of the Eco Review. This is a live, hour-long journal focused on environmental factors, events, and news impacting all of us in California and well out across the web reach. You know, we do stream live on the internet now, and you're able to get your friends who don't have a TV. I never watch that thing. Well, you can have them watch. It's just www.communitytv.org/CTV3. You'll see that address. So let them know this is a program they're going to want to see and make sure their friends see. It's really exciting to have our guests tonight. I'm going to get right to introductions here and share with you. I think a lot of our viewers will remember back in November, we were fortunate enough to connect with expert witness nuclear engineer Arnie Gunderson of Fairwinds and Associates. And Arnie has done just yeoman's work in keeping us abreast of developments in Japan, information TEPCO and Japanese government wasn't making available for us, and really the core components, if you will, for nuclear power and how they go awry even when they're invented or designed and developed by supposed and expert peoples. So we have Arnie back on tonight. He's going to be talking with us for updates on Fukushima and something a whole lot closer to home. And we'll get into that shortly in the program. But I'm also delighted to have in the studio with me tonight David Bloom. A lot of our viewers will recognize Dave. He's been on the program before. It takes time to come in and fill us in on things that he's working on. And Dave, there is a real intersection here between you and Fukushima. I know George Nuri of Coast to Coast AM had you on last year repeatedly to give updates on developments there.
Well, yes, Tom. We scientists, you know, all kind of get on the phone and talk to each other, and my colleagues in Japan were saying, you guys are not hearing the whole story. So, you know, I was doing my best to transmit on-the-ground information to the American media, which, you know, was kind of negligent in getting the word out to people. And you know, there is no over the fence. You know, everyone is downwind of everyone else, and so you couldn't really say that it's Japan's problem, because if it's Japan's problem, it's our problem. Winds circle the globe, and so do the oceans. So you know, it was important for us to know what really was going on there and what wasn't being told either to the Japanese or to the Americans.
Arnie, are you on there with us? Can you hear me this evening?
I can hear you crystal clear. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to reconnect with you. And you know, I don't know that you've had a chance to talk with David, but I really look forward to the exchange and dialogue between the two of you as the scientists and experts in tonight's program. And the work that you have done, and you and Maggie and Fairwinds have been dedicated to here in the last year, is just really exciting. I am sure there must be some incredible pressures on you to maybe discontinue this course of research. It's probably one of those things that you don't get a lot of governmental sort of support for doing. Is that correct?
Well, you know, when the accident at Fukushima Daiichi happened, I said, I am not going to let this get covered up. And, you know, our business, the billable portion of our business dropped way off. But I just thought it was so important for the world that the story had to come out, and had to come out consistently for a long enough period of time, because yeah, you're right, mainstream media was covering it up. And you know, it's interesting because I think there is an intersection between what David and I are doing. The book I wrote on in Japanese in Japan is called Fukushima Daiichi, The Truth, which talks about the accident, and The Future, which talks about the fact that there are alternatives and we don't have to build more nuclear plants to satisfy our energy demand. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, excellent. Well, let's get right to some of this, and I'm going to remind our viewers real quickly. You'll see the phone number up here. It's 425-8844 and area code 831. We do welcome or invite your question or call, but Arnie, what have you seen recently? Because Dave and I have both seen different pieces of news about Fukushima. What's most, do you think, is being covered up the best and is most important for us to recognize? Is it all done? Everything clean up now?
On the Daiichi site, the worst problem is Unit 4 and the fuel pool issues there. Through 2 Japanese ambassadors, they've finally gotten some worldwide attention. Bob Alvarez, Gordon Edwards, and I have been working with Ambassador Akio Matsumura for over a year now. And finally, the world understands that the Unit 4 actually still has the potential to create an even worse accident than what we experienced a year ago. So now Tokyo Electric is finally beginning to say what we've been saying now for over a year, and that's that you've got to get the fuel out of Unit 4 just as quickly as possible. Unit 3 isn't too far behind. It's kind of interesting. Nobody talks about Unit 3, but it had a 1/3 full core offload, so there was quite a lot of hot nuclear fuel in Unit 3's fuel pool too. So no, the site isn't out of the woods, but the other problem, of course, is Tokyo Electric doesn't have the money, and the Japanese government is drizzling it out, as opposed to admitting that this is going to be a half a trillion US, which is something on the order of 30 trillion yen or something like that. It's a big number. Instead of admitting it and having the Japanese people know that in the long haul they're going to spend an enormous amount of money cleaning this up, they drizzle it out. Every 6 months they say, well, here's another 20 or 30 billion. But in fact, it's going to be a huge amount of money that the Japanese are going to have to eat. And the last thing is the contamination throughout Japan, on the ground. We're finding house contamination in the form of household dust at extraordinarily high levels. People are sending us their vacuum cleaner bags from Fukushima Prefecture.
That's brilliant.
As far as 100 kilometers or 60 miles away, we're finding tens of thousands of disintegrations per second in a kilogram vacuum cleaner bag. So household dust, and of course the internal exposure that comes from it, is something that the Japanese government is not talking about either.
Yeah, it is electrifying to think that this has been dismissed by the media. You don't see that as a concern anywhere, but there were a couple of things you mentioned earlier to me today about effects of earthquake, perhaps where on the reactor itself. And I'm also thinking about something that Dave told me the other day, which was a story about a boat recently up on, that had come up on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, British Columbia coast, yeah.
Well, go ahead with I'll talk to you about the condition of that building. The Unit 4, you know, it's obvious it's a mess. I mean, if you look at it, it blew up. And Tokyo Electric has been saying, no, it's just fine. Although just recently, they've acknowledged that it's bulging in the middle. And it's interesting, too, because where that bulge is located indicates it's something called a first mode Euler strut defect. And that means it's likely a seismic problem that came with the initial earthquake or perhaps one of the ones after that. So the net effect of this is that the building has no containment, all this nuclear fuel, hot nuclear fuel in the fuel pool, and is bulging on the sides. And yet Tokyo Electric had a